Good afternoon, Dale.
Good afternoon.
I see that we're still waiting for Councilmember Jones, Councilmember Schran.
Okay, and Miss Brown let me know that she probably wouldn't be able to make it. I see the council president is now here.
Thank you.
Hi, it's Janine again. The meeting is now live streaming. We start whenever you and Andrea are ready.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to give it a couple minutes and then we'll get underway.
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
I see that Councilmember Schran is now in attendance.
okay. I would like to call the May 24th meeting of the Cuyahoga County Finance and Budgeting Committee to order at this time and ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Good afternoon, everyone. Calling the roll, Mr. Miller,
Here.
Mr. Tuma,
Here.
Mr. Jones,
Here.
Mr. Gallagher,
Here.
Mr. Schran,
Councilman Schran, you're
he's
muted.
muted, but he's here in attendance. Ms.
Okay,
Brown is absent. Ms. Baker? Here. And let the record reflect that Ms. Conwell is in attendance as well. You have a quorum.
thank you very much. And the next item on the agenda is number 3, public comment. Has any public comment been received?
No, Mr. Chair, no public comment was submitted.
And item number 4 on the agenda is to deal with the minutes from the last meeting, which was on May 17th. Do I have a motion relative to those minutes?
So move.
Second, Ann Baker.
Okay, it's been moved by Councilman Schwan and seconded by Councilwoman Baker to approve the minutes from the May 17th meeting. Any discussion? Hearing none, I would ask everyone to unmute themselves so that I can hear the yeas and the nays. And all those in favor of approval of the minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. And the ayes have it, the minutes are approved. And the next item on the agenda is Resolution 2021-0125.
Resolution 2021-0125, amending the 2020-21 biennial operating budget for 2021 by providing for additional fiscal appropriations, additional appropriation transfers, and cash transfers.
Thank you very much. And item number 6 on the agenda is the ERP discussion, and we're going to handle the legislation and the discussion simultaneously. So that item is also on the record, and I would ask the director to briefly present the legislation, and I understand there is a substitute.
Gladly. Good afternoon. Resolution number 2021-0125 is a request for $600,735 in additional appropriations for the ERP capital project. The 2021 budget update includes a reserve of $450,000 on the general fund cash balance for this purpose. This request, $600,000, $735 is $150,735 greater than the budgeted reserve and brings our overall budget for the ERP to $35,970,903. Jack Ryan will provide the specific contract detail on this request.
And Director, can you explain the nature of the substitute?
The initial request that I received from the IT department had the request broken down between salaries and contracts. And in the process, to change the overall request to being only contract amendments. So the dollar amount did not change. The narrative on the descriptor did change, removing any comments related to salary and benefits to all contracts.
Okay, thank you very much, Director. I would like to ask for a motion to accept the substitute and make it the version before the committee, and then we'll move on to hearing Jack Ryan's report. Is there a motion? May I have a motion to accept the substitute as the version before the committee?
So moved.
Is there a
Second.
second?
I'll second.
Okay, it has been moved and seconded to accept the substitute version as the version before the committee, meaning that the composition is all contractual and no salaries, but the dollar amount remains the same. Any discussion on the substitute? Hearing none. All those in favor of accepting the substitute, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Okay, the ayes have it, and the substitute is accepted as the version that's before this committee. And I would now call upon Director Ryan to present not only about the legislation, but at the same time to provide us the broader update on the current status of the ERP project.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hopefully, just get the technology straightened out. Can you see my screen?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to provide an update for the ERP program today, as well as the backup information for the appropriation requests. Moving right into the presentation. Our overall, where we're at an overall completion of ERP modules is that we have completed 20 of 23 modules. I would note, and I briefed this slide before, I would note that we've also completed the Galaxy Badge WFM integration. That includes the outbound, providing outbound information from the HR or GHR system to the Galaxy Badge system. So we successfully moved information between those two systems, and updates for new employees, terminations, changes in the HR system will be going forward. As soon as we flip the switch and put that in production, will actually automatically be transferred into the Galaxy system. So that's something that's been pending for some time, and we're pleased to report that that interface is ready to go into production at this point. The next slide here just depicts where we're at on an overall program completion for phase 1 of ERP. On this slide, I would note that we have moved from the position, the last brief that I did was February the 1st for the committee, I believe. And at that time, we had an 82% overall completion. That's moved to 88%. I would say that that's below the pace that everyone had anticipated, and that the slower pace has been caused by several things. One of those being the work that the ERP team has needed to do on stabilization and issue resolution for the already installed ERP systems, those 20 modules that we just mentioned. We also have taken time to staff up additional ERP, both consultants and employees, to bring the team up to full strength, and that has taken quite a bit of time. And while we were doing that and doing the stabilization, there wasn't sufficient staff to move the payroll WFM project forward at the pace that we'd anticipated. So while we didn't completely stop, we did make some progress. It wasn't the pace that we'd originally hoped, and we expect that pace to pick up, and we'll talk about that in just a moment. So we did continue in spite of some significant challenges, not only the ERP stabilization, but also just the general work environment of having everybody working remote in the COVID environment, plus the shortage of staff combined to slow down things a bit. But we have taken mitigation actions on all of those things at this point. So, okay.
Jack, may I ask a question?
Yes, ma'am.
Just curious, how long have we been at 100% going back to 20, what is that, 18? It's kind of tiny there. How long are we tracking from the very beginning of where you stepped in? Or December 2018. That's been 100% for a while, hasn't it?
I'm not sure which 100% you're referring to, but I came on board in the project. I believe it was in, I'd have to go back and look, maybe back in May of 2018. I'd have to look at the exact date.
I guess I'm just reading here. December 2018, 100%, January, February, March 19, 100%, all the way down to, then you get into December bundle 4, 78%. I mean, 78% completed, right?
78% is completed on bundle 4. Bundle 4, I would say, includes payroll, WFM, the remaining modules for phase 1. You'll see that the budgeting module is separately identified with its percent complete at 32%. Yes, ma'am.
So I guess I'm just asking is, do we need to show these others at 100% if they've been 100% for a while and just concentrate on what we haven't reached 100% yet?
Certainly. I've always just tried to, we can do that. I've always just tried to report the entire program across the board in terms of what was originally planned, because that's what in the past, that's what we've always reflected. But we don't need to necessarily show those past achievements on this slide going forward.
And just one follow-up, the February 2022, which is next year, what does that mean, labor budgeting for February of next year?
So there were 3 key pieces to the BFM module for Walter's Office of Management and Budget program. The first 2 of those have been completed, and we'll talk a little bit more about those going forward. But the remaining one could not be completed until payroll and workforce management were live, and we had actual payroll hours flowing into the budget module. And so that remaining work to do that interface can't be done until payroll's live. The work can start once we start receiving data from the parallels, payroll parallels, where we actually have labor data that we can forward in for testing. So that's what that remaining piece is. It's just labor. I don't want to minimize it. It's something very much needed by OBM, but it's labor budgeting and forecasting.
All right. I do remember that. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
So while
Any
we have
other questions?
While we have a break for questions, I would just ask on that newly completed item, when do you plan to do the the switch over and actually put the Galaxy system into production?
I would anticipate that that's going to, excuse me, that I would anticipate that's going to happen probably almost simultaneously with the turning on of other production interfaces. I'm about to talk about that in a moment going forward. Probably during the month of June is when we would anticipate doing that.
Okay, fine. Any other
Sir.
questions, my colleagues, at this point?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
Gallagher.
Councilman Gallagher.
Jack, I was reading Zig's last report. When you're saying 88% completed, is that 88% of the original request that we had, the original promise, or is it 88% of the 80% that's going to be delivered? And I refer to Zig's bottom line where he states that the county originally obtained 30 modules, enterprise-wide fiscal, human capital, et cetera, in 2016 with the expectation of completion after 2 years at the end of 2018. The county is now struggling to complete just 80% of the original scope by the end of 2021, 3 years beyond the original expectation and less functionality. So are you talking 88% of 80% of the 100% we were promised?
I'm talking 88% of these modules right here. And these are the modules that we have identified as phase 1. There were some exclusions from that, meaning that there were some things removed from scope that we put into phase 2, which has been previously briefed. So it's 88% of these remaining modules,
So it's
or these modules right here.
So Zig is right. 88%. You're saying 88% of the 80% of the original 100% that was promised, and that he states that the implementation of the remaining 20% that were taken out that was originally expected, they may not finish until 2023, which would be 6 years beyond the initial implementation date. Do you agree with that?
I don't agree with the computation of the 20% overall remaining, but if it just by a module count, if that's what we want to do, then there are some remaining modules that we've previously briefed that are deferred and maybe deferred indefinitely, depending on, not indefinitely, I'm sorry, bad choice of words, have been deferred and will be planned as part of a phase 2 implementation.
So the
We'll look
original,
closely at and I'm sorry if I
go ahead.
go ahead. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, finish.
No, that's I mean I think that completes my statement.
Okay.
We have briefed on this before, and there's a disagreement about the remaining modules making up 20%. Certainly not 20% of the effort.
So in
They're
essence,
minor modules.
okay, so we paid 19.8 million for 100% of the modules to be completed. We are now down to, and arguably plus or minus 80% that we're now paying for, yet we're almost 50% over we're probably at now, if we take those 20% out, 50% over the original cost of this entire project. You know, I'm just trying to get to that. You're saying 88% of what I'm considering the 100%, and that's a little bit skittish there. It's 88% of 80%, plus or minus, depending on who's right. And quite honestly, when dealing in this, Zig has been more right than the administration. So I'll take Zig's numbers as correct. So as you move forward, I'd appreciate it if you'd say 88% of, that's not the entire project we paid for. It's 80% of the project we paid for. That's all I'm saying.
I will be happy to brief the accurate numbers for that. I disagree again with the percentages there, and I also disagree with you with the percent that we're over budget or the amount that we're over budget. I rather focus on the remainder of this brief on the current status, and if we need to come back and address budget and over budget numbers, we can have that discussion, but I'd prefer to not do that at this time.
That's fine. I don't want to debate that because I don't want to win yet another debate with you. But you're asking for more money today, so you do agree
Yes.
we're over budget, right? You do agree
Yes.
we're over budget, right?
I agree that we're over budget and need
Okay.
an additional appropriation. We're forecasted, our forecasted budget needs an
Okay.
additional appropriation to complete. Yes,
All
sir.
right, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Jack, if
Other
I may ask
questions?
a question,
Yes, ma'am.
Councilwoman Baker.
thank you. Just looking this over while you had your discussion with Councilman Gallagher, the December, we're 88% complete. And this February 2022 labor budgeting, we can't do anyway until next year. So is it that 78% bar is where you hoped you would be higher? So we're really 78% because you can't really count the 2022, can you? Because we can't do anything about that yet.
Well, we can do something about it. If I could defer answering the question, we will start the work on that remaining budgeting piece before the end of the year. We just can't turn it on live until after payroll is live and start and actually feeding labor data to it. So it would be more accurate to say we're actually going to be working on it simultaneously with part of the payroll module
The
and
December,
after we start payroll testing.
the bundle 4 though, that's where we're probably not keeping pace. That's where you would hope that 88% complete, that 78 should be more like 88, just in that one.
If we had been keeping pace and hadn't had these other diversions, distractions here, if you will, serious things that we had to deal with, then I would have expected that pace to be higher, that number to be higher. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I just want to know where the focus is, and it sounds like it's in bundle 4.
Yes,
on
ma'am.
your graph. All right.
It
Thank you.
certainly is. Absolutely. Okay.
Thank
Other
you.
questions?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Yes. Yes, Jack. Phase 1, what is the target date for completion of phase 1?
Target date for completion of phase 1, including the BFM module, is in February of 2022. That's a payroll would go live at the end of the year, and budget and the budgeting module that we were just discussing would go live after that.
Is that January 31 or is that February 31?
I would look at the exact date. It would be basically the end of February. That would include the post go live support period after we turn it on.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Other questions?
Okay, please proceed.
Yes, sir. Okay, so just a summary, the details certainly to follow here, but just to cover some points as to where we are with payroll WFM implementation specifically. As I had mentioned, the ERP stabilization did impact the payroll WFM progress significantly. We had to pull staff to deal with other ERP related items and issues, and we've had to staff up to mitigate that, which we have done. We'll talk about that in just a moment. But there was a significant impact to that, and we've been working our way to mitigate that as quickly as possible. Payroll and WFM teams are now fully staffed. That's the mitigation for the problem. We've just recently achieved that. Been working to make sure that we have those teams. We'll talk about that in a minute. The preparatory work that's been done for payroll and WFM this time around, I know we've had challenges in the past. We're still challenged, but the preparatory work and the way the team is put together and the way they're working together has been excellent. And everybody understands that we're facing a significant challenge. This is one of the larger implementations. We're implementing a system for 8,000 employees, thereabout. And so it's got to come out right, and it's got to work properly without any downstream effects here. And so the team is working well together at this point. The parallel strategy, we've adopted a strategy of, I guess I would call it crawl, walk, run here, with implementing a sort of a micro version to test all of the interfaces and get production interfaces actually working in production. And then a mini parallel. Mini parallel would be, 30, 40 people, thereabouts, that would actually run, we would run payroll end to end on. We would do that by first, we take a copy of production and move it to a test environment and then run against that copy of production. So we're running real live data all the way around here for the mini, and then full parallels, followed by full parallels here. So it's a total of 4 between the micro, mini, full parallels that we're talking about still. The WFM user acceptance testing will include testing of all hours reporting codes. Now this, whatever we don't actually test, there's 1,000 codes here. So I don't want to diminish the significance and the challenge of doing that kind of testing here. There's codes for, with 1,000 codes, and across, you've got different pay codes, different hourly reporting codes across 42, I believe it is, reporting entities by the time you include unions and different employee handbooks. So in parallel testing, we'll probably pick up most of those. We have a way to identify those that we don't pick up, and we'll pick those up and make sure that they're tested in UAT, so that we'll have a test of all the hourly reporting codes here. The go live date still remains in place for the end of the year. I would say that that's challenging. It's always challenging, but the hope here is that we have staffed up significantly in both the team that's doing the stabilization and the team that's doing the payroll WFM work, so that both those teams can run in parallel. And once we turn on the production system interfaces, that is between human resources and the production version of payroll, and human resources and the production version of WFM, that will be a significant milestone. I don't think we've necessarily identified that as such in the past, but doing that will allow us to make copies of production for each parallel that we do. And that's significantly easier than doing a complete data conversion for each parallel. So we've changed up our strategy to try to do everything we can to allow the maximum time to get through payroll parallels.
And what is the timetable for turning on the production system?
Mr. Chairman? Mr.
Yes, sir.
Chairman? Yeah, Jack, can you define challenging in terms of a percentage of success for turning these on and going live on the currently prescribed date? Define the word challenging.
Define the word challenging? Well, I think the word
percentage of
challenging is,
success.
I guess I've been asked to do a percentage of success in the past. I'd probably decline to do that. But what I would say is that we have, I'll just go through the facts as we know them here. And we have overcome significant challenges to get to this point. We have a fully staffed team at this point. We have defined everything that we need to be able to get ready to run parallels. Challenging will mean it will be defined by how well the parallels actually are executed and what we find. If we get through parallels and we find that we've done all of the upfront work and have identified, well, and have identified everything that we have, and we have few issues in parallels, then I think our chances of success will be excellent. I think if we find significant problems in either the software or the process that we have in place, then I think we'll have issues that we'll have to deal with. We've had a lot of things come out of the woodwork here in terms of issues that we've had to deal with that were not anticipated. So I'm going to be hesitant to just sit here and say that I can predict everything that's going to happen between now and the end of the year. I feel the team feels confident that we can get to, once we get started with parallels, that we'll do well. But again, it depends on the results.
When's your go, no go on that?
Well, we're doing a go no go analysis every single week here on this, and I'll get into dates here in just a minute if I could
Okay.
defer that.
So,
Okay.
Director, a couple of questions. As far as when you're going to turn on the production system, when is that scheduled to happen?
I don't have the exact date here. I think we're working through that process of getting everything ready to do that right now, and we've adjusted our schedule to make sure that that can happen. It just has to happen before we actually start the first mini parallel.
And the second question is, if there's significant problems with the parallels, am I correct that they're probably going to start showing up during the mini without you having to wait till the full parallels?
I would say that will be our first indication. Yes, sir.
Okay.
If we
Other-
have problems with 30 or 40 people, then obviously we would have larger problems with a larger group. So, yes, sir.
Any other questions at this point?
Yes, Chair, Nan Baker.
Baker.
So we have 4 parallels for the strategy, micro, mini, and full. Have we completed the micro?
No, we are in the midst of the micro activities right now.
So with 4 parallels and micro, mini, and full being 3 of the 4s, are we only
No.
doing 2 fulls?
No, if I could, let me just move to the next slide right quick.
Okay.
Well, if you could just hold that
Okay,
question
I
for a
can.
minute.
Go ahead.
I probably confused everybody by saying 4 parallels and putting micro, mini, and full in there. Let me explain further in just a moment.
Okay,
Okay. All right.
yep,
So the total budget impact that we will discuss here has already been identified, and it's $601,000 here. And out of everything that we've replanned and adjusted, that's the net impact of this. And we'll discuss the details further in the brief. So as far as the team goes, one of the things I just finished discussing was the fact that we've ramped up the team. And by that, I mean, the decision was made as we realized that we were understaffed to deal with both the payroll implementation and the stabilization effort for all of the ERP modules that we currently have live, to do the right support and to deal with the issues we had at that point, that we really needed to staff up to run parallel teams. That is, one team to deal with stabilization and another separate independent team, as independent as possible, to deal with payroll and workforce management. We have successfully done that. It's been all-out recruiting effort done by involving a number of people here, but bottom line is that we have a payroll implementation team. All told, that's employees plus contractors and the departmental staff, all together of 11 people. We have a WFM team of 7 people, and the stabilization and support team for ERP is at 14 people overall. Again, that includes department staff that are involved. It includes the ERP employee staff, and it includes contractor staff and in those contractor staff. Some of those are Infor and some of those are independent contractors from other sources. So we've been successful in putting all of the pieces in place for success at this point in time. In terms of challenging, coming back to the definition of challenging here, a couple of things have happened on the staffing side that have created some new challenges here. First of all, we are in the process of interviewing. We had one open spot here for the support team for GHR, for support of the Human Resources Department and their GHR team, and we are interviewing. We have been in. That's a tough spot to fill because it's a tough skill set to find available in the marketplace. We have found a couple of alternatives, and we're continuing to interview for those. We may Optimistically, we may actually be able to close up on that position this week, depending on the results of the interviews we're going to do in the next couple of days. The other definition of challenging here is that the ERP team manager, key person that's been involved throughout the process. He was here when I got here, as a matter of fact. We received his resignation during this last week, and are obviously going to be recruiting for a replacement. But meanwhile, we're going to have to do some adjusting of the team, and we can't, I can't possibly say that there's no impact to that, because it's a significant impact to the team. So we're working through just adjusting that. That was news that we just received about a week ago. So, and he'll be leaving here at the end of this week. So that's an impact. And then we lost a project manager that was also engaged in the stabilization effort that will have to be replaced. So in terms of staffing impacts, we've been able to fill a lot of the technical positions that we needed for payroll and WFM. Those positions we've worked through arduously through that process and filled those positions. But losing a key manager is something that we're going to have to adjust to, and it will take, literally, optimistically, it'll take a month or two to replace somebody in that role. So we've got to make team adjustments within that. We're still in the process of doing that. So I don't have all the answers sitting here today, but we are working to make sure that we can continue moving in all areas. I would say that the payroll and WFM teams, now that they are fully staffed and independent, that helps mitigate some of that. Okay. Any questions on staffing at this point?
Well, just one, Jack. It
Yes.
just seems that when we have someone leave of significance, there's no one that works with that person. There's no one to bring up and why is it that why is there so much emphasis on one person when they leave and there's no one that can step up into the role, given we've been doing this for the last 3 or 4 years? It doesn't seem healthy that the entire project is reliant on one person, like the team manager or the project manager, and there's no one that can step up into that role that's already been there for all this time.
I would say this: the county is one deep in a lot of key positions here. But what we have done with the ERP team over the last few months here is we did reorganize the team so that we had that key manager as well as 2 managers underneath him, one for the technical team and one for the functional team. The technical team lead position has been filled. So we do have, we're more than one deep here in that area. That doesn't mean that person can take over the entire team. It just means that we have additional management in place for the technical team. The functional team lead position has not been filled. And so we're looking to bring in some project management assistants to help in some of these areas, so we can make sure that we keep things moving and keep the team organized. So we do have ways to mitigate that, but there's no way to completely make up for the loss of somebody that has as much knowledge as somebody that's been working on this in depth. He's been absolutely instrumental for the last 3.5 years. So we organizationally, we have done a lot of things to try to make sure that we have succession planning, if you will, in place, which is kind of what you're referring to. But we're not completely done with that, and the timing is not perfect. No question.
All right. So in your opinion, when ERP is up and running and we're no longer in the stabilization mode, unless it's just for specific reasons, not for fixing or shoring up what's already been launched, you don't believe that we will be dependent on 1 or 2 people. If they were to leave, the entire system will shut down. And we're not setting ourselves up for that.
We're certainly not in a position where the entire system will shut down if one person leaves. But again, if you lose a key person that's been so involved in both the technical and the functional sides of this for that period of time, it's going to have an impact. We're doing everything we can to try to mitigate that at this point. I would come back and I'm going to move to the next slide if I could. To clarify one comment that you had made here, which is we're no longer in the stabilization mode. We're very much in the stabilization mode here. And the stabilization mode. We're very much in the stabilization mode here. We will, to make sure that I realize that's not the focus of this brief, although I do have slides. Something came up on the screen. I do have some slides in backup that if there's time and interest that I can go through with exactly where we are for stabilization. But there's a 6-month effort, at least estimated at 6 months, to get through all the stabilization issues that we have. That's why we staffed up. Going back to this slide, that's why we staffed up this team so heavily down here to make sure that we absolutely nailed as all of the, at least all the critical outstanding issues. So a lot of effort's gone into just making sure that we cleaned that up.
And
Jack,
Jack,
can I ask you a
Answer your
question about your
question? I'm not sure if I did.
Yeah, on your stabilization and your
Hold on,
headcount, you're saying,
Jack,
Hello.
Jack, hold on a minute, please. Ms.
Okay.
Baker still has the floor.
oh, I thought she was
Oh
done.
boy.
Oh, I'm sorry. I could have waited. I was just going to say that, in your opinion, Jack.
No,
Oh, is it someone else?
can you hear me okay?
Yes,
Now-
we can hear you. Ms. Baker,
In the stabilization piece of 6 months,
I'm losing the audio here.
you were breaking up too, but is it me or is it just our overall connection?
I can hear you now.
Councilwoman Baker, you're coming in well from my end.
Okay. Jack, you were
Good
breaking up
afternoon,
earlier.
everyone. It seems like we're having technical difficulties. Good
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
afternoon, everyone. It seems like we're having technical difficulties. Maybe we would want to pause. Meeting can be live streamed and everyone can hear us, the public can hear us. So if we just pause for one moment, we would be greatly appreciated if you just bear with us. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. We can go back to the meeting.
Okay, so Councilwoman Baker has the floor, followed by Councilman Tron.
Thank you, Chair. So my question was about the stabilization effort and now estimated at 6 months. Are you still in the position that this stabilizing is equal to other ERP stabilizations? Or is some of this really reconfiguring, new personnel coming in and changing the way they think this should be done and redoing what we thought was the right thing to do, but now going back and, I mean, I'm just I've always questioned whether or not the restabilization was just that of updating, or was it something that structurally was wrong to begin with? And new people coming in have said, I have a better way. Are you still in the position that that stabilization is operational?
The position the stabilization is operational. I don't think there's any question, but there's always going to be, the only caveat I would say here is that there's always going to be improvements that somebody wants to a system. They're operational from the standpoint of the specification, the configuration of the system based on the original specifications in most cases has been completed. However, there's certainly always going to be improvements to systems, and there's going to be things that people hadn't anticipated. I mean, we're replacing 25, something like 25 other legacy systems in 40 agencies, and is there a chance that we missed something somewhere, requirement someplace? Sure, there's always that possibility. Did we get the bulk of them? Yes. The things that we're seeing in stabilization, again, I've got a whole brief on that if we wanted to go there, but bottom line is that we're seeing certainly seeing operational issues. We're seeing, for example, we've had auditor requirements come in that they previously audited the other system, the legacy system. Now we're having to audit a brand new system that the auditors haven't seen before, and they've got some new requirements for reporting. That was a key thing. So we're going to find those kinds of things. The audit stuff is not something we're going to have to repeat next year. We'll do it once, and it'll work from that point forward. But there are things like that have been identified, and they're important. We had procurement issues that I think everybody on the panel is aware of. We have resolved those, and we are improving that process by having resolved both a combination of bugs and process, and we'll continue to improve that. But those are some of the items on the list as well.
I guess this is for your example of procurement and the issues we had with procurement. I mean, that's an operation that has a beginning and an end. We know what needs to be done in order to be successful in procurement. And I guess I'm just asking to go back and revamp that. Just seems like we're not updating, we're not trying to meet certain policies that may have changed, but we're actually taking procurement and fixing what should have been fixed, or at least realized at the time that we did procurement. And I guess the stabilization effort just seems to be very, it's delaying everything. It's delaying our payroll, WFM. It's now compromising whether or not we can even go to the end of the year with our payroll and launching for our first check in January. All of that seems to be compromised because of stabilization efforts of modules that were already launched, more than just updating and revising. I could be wrong, but that's what I see happening here.
No, I don't disagree entirely with you. I think stabilization certainly is, as I said, stabilization has had a significant impact on us. The mitigation for that is to add staff so that we can run the stabilization team and the payroll WFM teams in parallel, and we're now in a position to do that. Yes, it took a couple of months of effort to get that done. So we are finally there, and I know the team's working hard to try to stay on pace.
All right, and your 6-month effort ends when? When do you think stabilization will be at least over as far as the bulk of it? I'm sure we'll always be going back, but when
I'm sorry.
When do you expect that? You say 6 months, production stabilization estimated 6 months. When's the beginning and end of that?
Well, I think we started that effort a couple of months ago.
Okay.
We are in the process of picking what the end date is. In in making this a separate project, one of the decisions that the team is just working through, the stabilization team is just working through with department managers and key stakeholders is what does it mean to be stable, right? So what it means to be stable is that everything that the department, each one of the departments considers to be mandatory has been done. There's a lot of issues out there. Which ones are actually mandatory, which ones actually need to be done. So out of 144 issues that were identified to begin with, okay, there's 30 that have been identified as mandatory that have to be done. And there's some other ones that are a higher priority behind that. So the call on when we're stable is when the department managers in each area feel like we've accomplished enough of their issues so that they consider their operations stable. Not that we're going to do all 144 necessarily before we close out the project. Some of those will be issues that are going to be normal, quote unquote, normal activities that you would do in any post implementation.
Okay, I guess if you're going to put a project stabilization estimated at 6 months and we started in April, then it would be reasonable for us to think that by the end of September, we should be very much through at least the impact of what stabilization has done to this project.
Right.
Is that fair?
That is fair. I think that I'm going to go do this. So if I go back to this slide for just a minute, we just now have gotten these teams up to full strength, right? So we've been getting close to that over a period of time. So what we haven't seen is the impact of these new, a couple of senior consultants in each area that will help us get through this period. They've just now got the rest of that team onboarded so that we start picking up pace on the stabilization as well. So, you never know everything. I'm telling you where we are now.
Am I wrong to say, Jack, that the reason why we had to beef up the implementation team is because we were pulling from them into the stabilization team? I mean, wasn't that the reason why we were weak in payroll and WFM? Is because,
yes, ma'am.
Yeah, so
That is what we had to do.
if it wasn't for such a great need in stabilization, we would have had our payroll team for the most part in place.
For the most part, that's true. We really had to turn the team completely upside down and reorganize in order to get both things to run in parallel.
Okay, just trying to get a picture. Thank
Yes,
you,
ma'am.
Jack.
Sure.
Councilman Swan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You say that we're at full strength, but I thought just announced that we lost some critical members who've been with us. So that seems to me to be inconsistent with full strength, unless those persons were not doing a functional job, and I can only assume they were doing a functional job.
They were, and when I say we're at full strength, we've if you look at the number of people in the team, yeah, we certainly have lost, some of the key leadership here in losing the ERP team leader. So I didn't mean to diminish that impact at all. I think I said that was critical.
But how can you say we're at full strength if you've lost an ERP team leader and that's critical? It seems to me to be an oxymoron.
It would be. When I say full strength, I probably should not use the word full strength. The individual teams here are at full strength. The leader over the group overall, losing that would leave us not at full strength. So.
And are these implementation teams, Jack, or are these people that are going to be with us come the running of this system when we go live?
It's a mix of people. When I say these teams are department employees that are going to run the system and are involved in the implementation, ERP staff employees that will be here long term, and at this point we got a pretty heavy complement of contractors to beef up those teams so that we can get the work done. So
none of these 32 people are contract employees. These are all 100% our employees are going to be with us in theory, all the way through from here on out, carrying out the project and continuing to sustain the project once it
No,
goes
sir.
live.
No,
Okay.
no, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm
Okay.
saying is it's a mix of, there is a heavy complement of contractors.
Tell me what
this mix
heavy
here.
is in 32. I'm looking at, you say 32 people, that gives us full strength, less the key people who are not there, and in the management side. Of these 32 people, how many are contractors versus how many are permanent employees?
I can get you that count. I don't have the numbers right in front of me here.
Give me a rough idea. 50%?
Well, if
70?
if I look at the ERP team, for example, I've got, to pick out the number of contractors involved, 1, 2.
Just roughly. I mean, you should know whether or not that, you should be able to look at that
5,
32 and
6.
say,
If I look at the payroll team, I've got 6 contractors.
okay, so
Okay,
roughly,
just to give you an idea.
roughly 20% of that number.
Yeah,
Okay.
a little higher
Well,
than that, but
32,
yeah.
I'm just doing simple math, 32, 6, that's 20%. Sorry.
Yeah, right.
yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Do you need those 6 people to go live with the system? Or is that when you go live, you're only going to need to have 26 people to go live with the system?
We will need these people to get through at least most of our parallels. And then for go live, we will look at this again to see how many of those people we actually need for the go live effort. We'll need less of them to go live. Right now, we needed to beef up the payroll and WFM team so we can actually get all of the technical work done needed to do this. We will not necessarily need the same number of people through the entire process, but we need them at least to get through the first parallels to make sure everything's working correctly.
Wait, you just indicated we need to beef up the payroll team. Does that mean that the payroll team is not at full strength?
No, past tense, we needed to beef up the payroll
Okay.
team. They are now at full strength as indicated on the slide.
Okay, I'm just trying to reiterate, because I see it's not unique to the county. It's in every facet of work, it is hard to find people.
Yes,
Every
sir.
place. And I can only think that the fact that we are running 4, 5, and if you go to Zig's, worst case, could be going past 5 years late, that cannot be a good recruiting vehicle to go out and say, would you like to join a team that's running a project that's 4 or 5 years late? Are you finding difficulty in getting people to want to sign up for this team?
Yes, we've indicated that in previous briefings. I think just finding employees is challenging, especially in the ERP arena, especially as demand is now beginning to pick up now that some COVID concerns are fading and production systems are coming online from other parts of the economy. So
it just strikes me as that if I'm a candidate looking, I don't want to join a team that's 4 or 5 years late with a project. It just tells me that that's not a place I really want to be. And so I did not know whether that is something that you are finding is making our matters even that much more difficult. In addition to being over budget, I'd be willing to bet it's going to be tough to find people to want to join this team under those two.
No. I don't think that's so much an issue. It's a whole discussion, but I don't think that's the primary issue. I think oftentimes compensation levels are an issue because ERP skills are in high demand typically. And so I think that continues to challenge us, even though we've made adjustments and certainly have had administration support to do that. It's a combination of things that just makes it challenging. The intent here is that we would take some of these contractors and we would continue recruiting. We're constantly recruiting, I would say that. Our recruiting record is actually pretty good compared to many areas of the county. We've been able to bring, when I say recruiting, not only employees, but contractors, we've been able to bring enough in to get the job done here. But we need to convert some of those contractors into employee positions. And we'll continue to work on that.
Yeah, good luck. I will fall back on, people don't like to join losing teams. And this, when it looks like the numbers are running 4 and 5 years late, I just can't believe that that's an easy sell to convince somebody to join a team. But good luck to you on that, because I think that's going to drive us even more you have a challenge to hit these targets as if you're losing critical supervisors like this. Thanks.
Yeah.
So,
Yes, sir.
to follow up on what Councilman Schwan said, I would say that in spite of these challenges, that getting the WFM and payroll implementation teams up to full strength is an accomplishment. And I think going forward that it's very important that we get on a track where we remain on schedule for an extended length of time and demonstrate that we're able to operate effectively. So hopefully that can happen going forward.
Yes, sir. Okay. No question. I spend a significant amount of my time recruiting. So on the phone with people. So,
Please continue.
yes, sir. All right. I've really already covered these percentages. This just frames the percent completes in terms of what shows on the project schedule. This is something that you see this pieces of this or this whole schedule on every weekly report. So I'm not going to spend any time here to speak of. Preparation for parallel testing. This includes, there's a lot of detail underneath this. One of the things that's happened since the last brief is that we did add, and I've already mentioned this, called it out, this micro activity here. That this is where we're ramping up to do to make sure all the interfaces are working correctly and all the conversions are working correctly. We have all the data that we need, and we've run a conversion of that data into our production environment, and then that's the one that'll get copied back for parallel testing into our testing environments. So the things that we have that are challenging in this area, we still have some lingering updates to our legacy GIAC payroll system. With the team is in, I hope, the final stages at this point of getting the changes made to the W4 system and getting them tested. We found some problems with the patches that were supplied for that old legacy system, and they're still testing through those, but that's one of the things that has to be completed, because we're going to pull that information out of the legacy system and use that information for part of our load of data into the new system. It also includes validating interfaces, and it includes the implementation of the AWS system for the new communication system that allows NEAs to connect for their direct entry of information. I've talked about this before. It streamlines the way that people are able to log into both ERP and other things. That's progressing well. It's the agencies that are predominantly going to be using this are BODD, HHS, Adams Board, and Board of Health. So that most of those connections are up and working at this point. So that system has been validated. So there's a lot of work and a lot of detail that goes into this preparation piece. But the goal here is that at the end of this micro process, most, if not all of these, will be at 100%, and everything that we need to go forward with parallels will be done.
So Director, your chart lists Friday, June 11th as the target date for the completion of the micro. Are we still on track for that date?
I think most of the work will be done by June 11th. Certainly, there's some that may lap beyond that a little bit, but in general, I think the team is pretty confident that we've provided enough time to do that. With the first mini parallel, the important date here is the mini parallel is now is scheduled for July the 4th. The objective is to have all of this stuff done so that we can actually load data and do the implementation work necessary, or the preparation work necessary to do the July 4th mini parallel.
So I know you've said in the past that there needs to be one payroll period between parallels, and so that would seem to suggest that that June 20th would be about the latest that you could go on completion of the micro in order to do the mini on July 4th. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, the micro is really just involves very few people and is predominantly a technical exercise. Okay, so that's we added that step as a checkpoint to make sure that we had all the right things in place and we could just do make sure that everything was going to run end to end for the mini. So
And what date is the final go, no go on the mini?
I honestly don't have that in front of me. We're on for the mini, we're really running go no go meetings every Friday at this point, and we'll probably continue to do that and as to keep everybody focused on the end goal. So we've already run the team has already run two of those, and they're constantly looking at this in a very structured way to make sure that we have all the boxes checked. So
Okay.
yes, sir. Right.
Chief, if I may ask a question on this chart.
Yes, you may.
So Jack, trying to make sense of some of these dates and times. For example, payroll HR user parallel preparation since September of last year. And the end date for that was March 19th of this year, but you have only 19% completed. What does that mean?
Well, it just for that particular the activities under that activity under that task is I think there's some documentation activities that needed to be done, I believe, under that one. I can get you the detail for that. Some of these are, well, I believe that I would have to provide you the details separately under that one.
So are we
Don't have that
saying
in
that
front
we
of me.
should have been, it was anticipated to have that 100% as of March 19th of this year? Is that what that date means?
So the one that you're asking about is the payroll HR user parallel prep, or the,
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
yeah. Yes, I'm just picking that
That-
out as an example that it has as of 5/14/21, Friday 3/19/21. Was that a completion date for March and we missed it and now we're 19% along, or we should be 100% in that category?
Well,
because
it's
March was a couple months ago?
I'm sorry, the percent to look at properly would be the one on the left-hand side. There's one by task count, there's one by effort. So the actual effort percentage is 46% on the left-hand
Oh.
side here. I'm sorry. And we did not, in some of these cases, we just didn't go back and adjust the dates. We acknowledged that we missed them because we were not staffed right. And the expectation is that we would complete those activities as part of the micro.
Okay, so the 19% of, what's the 48% at the top? What does that mean? In blue,
Well,
it's very right.
and I'm sorry for the lack of headings on this one.
Yeah.
The right-hand side percentages were a percentage based solely on just a task count, not the effort required. The way that project works, you can either you can just count the total task regardless of how long they are or how much effort it takes, or and that's just a pure counting the number of tasks that you checked at 100%. You could have everything else at 99%, but but if it's not at 100%, it wouldn't count in that 19%, right? The one on the left-hand side, the percentage on the left-hand side takes into account the actual effort based on the actual duration of the task.
Okay.
I probably would have been better served to just not show on the right-hand side because it's not as meaningful to you. Sorry.
So as of now, if I'm understanding you, then the payroll HR user parallel preparation is 46% completed. So we need to do another 54% before 6/11/21 in order to launch the micro test. Is that fair?
For that particular group of items, yes, ma'am. So we're overall at about 73% for this block of items.
But you can't really go by 73%. You have to look at each individual, because each individual needs to be 100, doesn't it?
Yes,
Yeah.
as each one becomes closer to 100, then this will. So yes, that's the answer.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. How confident are you that we're going to meet this 611
Well,
micro
I
test?
think what I'm confident in is that we'll I think the micro set of activities is ongoing right now. I mean, we're working our way through that. That really is the predecessor for the July 4th timeframe, and I think the team has a lot of confidence in July 4th. So the micro prepares us for that by just doing all of the individual testing to make sure things are hanging together before we put our first group of 30 or 40 people through the system.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Thank you, Jack. Yeah.
Sure. Okay.
Okay, continue.
Yes, sir. So this is parallel testing and training. This is right now what we're saying is this needs to be completed before we start parallel number 2, which is the larger full parallel. And I really haven't adjusted, I don't think, this much since we originally briefed it here. So I'm not going to spend too much time on this as well. This is the way the parallel schedule currently is currently laid out. When I said crawl, walk, run, this is what that interprets out to. I think we've allowed time to do some analysis between parallels. I think that this first parallel is one of the most complex ones. As I mentioned, we're actually turning on all of the production interfaces and then copying production down to a test environment. So that'll really tell a story on how well prepared we are or aren't. Hopefully are is the answer for the rest of the parallels. And that's the way the schedule lays out. So I've specifically noted the dates down here. There may be some adjustments within these dates, but right now the most important date that we're looking at is the July 4th date here for the mini parallel. Okay.
Jack, again, with these dates, if I may, Chair.
Yes, you may.
So we had a mini test on 6/6 that was canceled. Then we have a 6/20 date for I believe that was going to be a full. That's now canceled. Now we're looking at a 7/4 back to a mini. And then we're looking at an 8/1 for a full with 2 more fulls before we actually launch the final for a January payroll check. That's a lot of delays, at least it appears to be. How do we, I mean, that July 4th is our first mini parallel. That's over a month away. I mean, I don't know. I mean, should we be concerned about that? If you were in our seat and you keep seeing these delays, would that be concerning on a track that we're on right now of constantly seeing this being pushed back and narrowing the amount of full testings too? We're down to 3. And that's only if everything works well before August 1st. I mean, how concerned are you about that?
Well, I'm concerned about it from the standpoint of we've got to make sure that all the right pieces are in place. That's the reason we put this sort of micro test to make sure that we had everything prepared properly before we started putting users into the system. Because we want to be assured that things are going to work properly with that small group, and especially the reason we put a small group, that so-called walk acronym there in place, was so that we wouldn't have our first parallel be 800 people and have issues that we hadn't anticipated. Yeah, I am concerned that we delayed some period of time. We did have 620 on the schedule. And when we really looked at the impact of losing our ERP team lead and where we were with the rest of this, we decided to push that off a couple of weeks to give the team time to adjust to that, time for the knowledge transfer that was necessary in losing a key member like that, and to make the adjustments that we needed to make sure that we were ready to go on July the 4th. So we had probably 5 or 6 open items that caused that was a go no go meeting we had last Friday, and the team consensus, and I agree with them, is that we should move out 2 weeks to July the 4th. So we did that.
Okay, and in the next 15 to 16 days, we're ready to do a micro test.
Where, like I said, the pieces of that micro test are underway. As the team is working through all of those different things here. So.
We're at a 50% place right now, 15 days away, 16 days away.
Thereabouts, yeah. That's just a rough estimate from the team at this point.
Okay. All right,
Okay.
thank you. Yep.
Yes, ma'am.
So I would
I'm sorry.
I would just comment that if you successfully do a mini parallel plus 3 full parallels, you should be able to take a shot at go live on January 1st. I don't know how much more preparation you could do than that.
I would agree, and I think our ability to do that just again is going to be directly dependent upon the quality of those or the results of those parallel tests. That's what it all boils down to. And I know it may not be obvious from the percentages that you look at here, but the team is so much better organized and focused than they were before. Plus, we've added sufficient staffing to this to really give ourselves a good shot at this. So beyond that, are there any guarantees beyond that? There's no guarantees in life and beyond that, but we've certainly done everything that we can and put all the pieces in place to try to be successful here. So that was not necessarily there before.
Okay, please
Okay.
continue.
Yes, sir. Just a note, excuse me, a couple of notes on WFM user acceptance testing. No change from the schedule that I originally showed. I just wanted to emphasize again that we still plan to test all WFM scenarios. If we don't pick up the scenarios as part of parallel testing, then anything that we don't pick up, we'll make sure we pick up as part of user acceptance testing for WFM. Again, this is a major deal. There's 1,000 rules out there. I keep coming back and mentioning that, but it's really true. There's 1,000 pay rules out there that have to be tested. Hopefully we'll pick most of them up in parallels, but there's a lot of things that are relatively obscure that we may have to come back and make sure if we haven't picked it up in a parallel and tested that scenario in the normal course of people entering their time, then we'll have to do that in user acceptance testing. And this is the time where we would pick up not only those scenarios, we would also final test any changes that we discover coming out of those parallel activities. So that's when this would happen. Okay. The training schedule for go live, again, it's the same sequence that I had briefed before. We're going to be training approximately 800 supervisors, 7,200 employees. The training will be a combination of online demos, online training, live training for supervisors online. We'll have video courses. We're also looking at and allowed in our budget forecast that we'll get to here in a few minutes. We've allowed for a significant amount of money to bring in some professional training if we need it. We think we probably will. So those plans are still working their way through the process. But this is the target dates when this would occur. The actual go live schedule, again, has not changed. If going live is the first of the year, means that with time entry, would begin on December the 19th and in January the 1st, with the first paycheck issued on January the 7th. So the go no go decision to do that would be made in December, early December to the 3rd. The BFM labor budgeting that we have talked about already some is again, that's to do this testing. We have to wait for data coming out of parallels. And you'll see here by some of the dates, we've got an estimated date that when we would actually have some of the data start to become available so that we can start testing this. I would mention again that in order to make this activity happen properly, we're going to be recruiting and interviewing for a project manager to help work with the Office of Budget and Management to make sure that we get this done properly for them, this last piece done properly for them. In addition to this piece, I would say that there's also part of the appropriation ask here is that we were adding some money for additional licenses for budget forecasting and management, so that that OBM can take that and move it out to other departments to be able to do more to maintain their own and inquire into their own budget information on their own. So that, at least from a scheduling standpoint, that concludes that section. And before we move into finances, any other questions? Okay, moving on, just a quick graphical representation of kind of where we are from going back to August of last year and looking at the numbers forward from that point. So we currently have an appropriation of $35,370,168. We're asking for an additional appropriation to take us up to a total forecasted capital budget of $35,970,903. Okay. So the one thing that the changes across this time period from August through now is that we did anticipate and briefed council that we had a forecast increase back in the November, December timeframe, when we realized we were not going to make that schedule, of about $1.5 million that consumed what we had left in terms of forecasted appropriations. Okay, that we had ERP staffing increases, and we validated that budget very closely with what we felt our staffing needs were going to be. And we also identified some additional training needs. And we put all that into the budget forecast that we have in front of you today. And the total increase for today's request is $600,725, $35, of which there's $450,000 was reserved in the general fund, anticipating that we might need something. So there's an additional $150,735 beyond what's been reserved at this point that is part of the ask today. The current forecasted position for the capital budget that is $35,970,903. If we look at that from just the general budget impact, the actual general, $7 million of that is internal staff costs that are not an impact to the general fund budget. and are not a cost to the public. So from that standpoint, that takes us to our $600,735 request. So that's our current position as of April 30th. Financial statements, which are also included in backup slides for this presentation. Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
Jack, could you stay on that slide? You know, this is a pet peeve of mine, and I've said it time and again. The budget for this ERP project is not $25 million. You know that, and I know that. What was it? If you don't know it, I don't know why you're there. What was the budget?
Is that question directed at me? I'm sorry.
Yes.
Okay.
What was the
Okay.
original? It wasn't 25 million.
There was a $21 million budget with approximately a $4 million what was considered contingency at that time.
Okay, so it's not
So-
25 million.
So there was a $25 million appropriation, which is accurate.
But it's not, it wasn't but the budget. That was the overage. This county, and since we've been elected, we have never really gone in and eaten any of the money that was set aside. This is the first time that I can recall. So to say it's a $25 million budget is disingenuous at best. So, and the $7 million for county staff, who pays for county staff?
Well, I'm not sure that that's the discussion you want to pursue right now, but
Sure it is.
obviously
The taxpayers pay for the county staff.
the
So it is a
taxpayers pay for the
cost to the
county staff.
My point to you is overall, and to my colleagues listening, this is a cost to the taxpayers. These are real dollars. These are real dollars going into a black hole and coming out with nothing. So to say really kind of offhand that $7 million is free or doesn't count, of course it counts. To say it's $25 million when, quite honestly, I believe it was 19.8 million originally, and say it's 25 is you're trying to cover your backside. I understand that because this is a mess. But that 25 million, even if you took that, that's for 100% of the project. When we first started, we paid for 100% of the project. We're getting 80, and we'll wait till Thursday to talk to Zig about that because you're challenging his number. But to suggest in any way this really isn't a big deal and that our staff, I guess, is free is ridiculous.
No, that's not what I'm saying. And I never said that it was not a big deal.
Well, it
Okay.
it comes from.
I would appreciate not being quoted out of context in this case, Councilman. All
I
right.
didn't quote you. I said suggest.
hold on a minute, everybody. We've just got to speak one person at a time, and please go through the chair. I know there's differences of viewpoint on these questions, but we have to each put forward our viewpoints carefully and respectfully.
Yes, sir.
Jack, you have the floor.
Thank you. All right. So the without pursuing that previous discussion further at this point, so based on the capital budget alone, if we just focus on those numbers, which is, I think, the purpose of our meeting today, we have we have a shortfall in the forecasted capital budget, of $600,735, of which $450,000 has been reserved in the general fund, and $150,735 would be the total amount over what's currently appropriated. We have, if I can go back to this slide for just a moment, as we saw what was happening with the project and the project schedule, we took every possible effort to try to mitigate from a financial standpoint by terminating contracts, moving contracts around to the most to most effectively use the funding, so that we have a relatively flat line here from the time November through now. And so we've not come in, despite some forecasts by others that said we were going to be $3, $4, $5 million over the 35. We did not do that. As a matter of fact, this is the total net amount over our appropriation that we are requesting, despite all of the changes, despite all of the challenges. It's a $600,000 impact on the forecast at this point, not the actual spend at this point. So the question is, if I were sitting in your shoes, we're going back to August. You recall we had, at that point, we had a $1,251,000 remaining appropriation. So the question is, what happened to that? Why are we at $600,000? And that question was asked, I think, previously, and I just wanted to provide the detail of exactly what goes into that net $600,000 request. So internal staff capitalization, additional, meaning our internal cost for internal staff for this period of time, forecasted for this period of time, rose to an additional $717,601. Okay. Contract extensions, we terminated some and moved some contracts around. The net impact of that is a total of $1,134,198. So those specific contracts we did, and the most of these you've seen before in one form or another in Board of Control, but just the list of those is here. But we did add a change order 65 for some additional assistance from Infor for Payroll and WFM, both technical and functional support there. We've accounted for training assistance. I mentioned that we expect to get some professional training assistance. That additional training assistance is right here. At $233,000. We don't know exactly what the cost is, but we're forecasting that based on some estimates at this point, and we'll get more specific with that. We don't have a contract in place for that at this point, but we forecast that that's a requirement. We have actually added in for additional these contractors, DWI, Unify, these two contracts right here. We're having to extend these contracts because the ERP schedule extended for Payroll and WFM. They support in those areas. They support SAP and they support the mainframe system. So that's the additional amount that required for that additional scheduled time. Zig's contract would be extended to cover that period of time, and that amount is in this $81,000. Okay. So in addition, I mentioned the licenses for the BFM budgeting system, the $81,000 that we need so that we can continue to roll that out to additional users was also added in, and that's considered to be an ERP expense and was added into the total. So when you net all of that out, that gives us an additional forecasted requirement of $600,735. So that's how we get to that number. There's the details behind that and exactly how we what was done from August remaining appropriation to having a requirement now.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Councilman Gallagher.
So Jack, you're not coming for any more money for phase one, right?
Certainly not at this time, Councilman.
And what
I
happens
don't
if
know
you-
what I don't know any more than you do.
Are you the project manager?
I am the program manager for this.
Oh,
So
oh,
we've
okay.
anticipated everything that we know at this point in time.
You haven't been good in the past, which is why I asked, but we'll leave it at that. And we have phase two and phase three coming, right?
the phase two or phase three and what we should or shouldn't do in those areas is a whole separate discussion.
Right.
And how we pursue that is a whole separate discussion. Yes,
But
sir.
those were originally part of phase one, which was all together and then piecemealed out. Not your issue, but that's what happened.
Mhm.
That's good. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Jack, if I may ask a question, Chair?
Ms. Baker, please request through the chair.
Thank you, Chair. If I may ask a question.
Please proceed.
Just to make sure I understand the less capitalized county staff costs of 7 million. Are we saying that those employees existed in the county and they were doing both jobs? Their job capitalized in the capital part of this, and then also their own job in what they were hired to do, and that's why there's a capitalized cost in place. I'm not quite sure how we rationalize what the capitalized county staff costs, which brings down the price to 28.
Well, I think if I understand your question, Councilwoman,
Yeah,
the question is what is internal staffing capitalization, I guess.
yes, I
is the question.
guess.
Okay,
But
okay.
Go ahead.
And what that is any employee that is working on ERP implementation for ERP.
Right.
It separately reports their hours through their department, and we pick up those hours and we accrue those against the implementation project. So there is and we have I'll be more than happy to provide the details. We have a very detailed tracker for all of those hours that make up our staffing. And that's how we actually come up with a forecast. We take their actual hours, we take what we know we're doing with the schedule and what their assignments are, and then we extend that out to determine what we forecast those employees are going to spend on ERP from now through the completion of the project. And that's how we make that adjustment. So it doesn't necessarily mean they've spent the hours now. It's a combination. Everything they have spent up to this point or reported up to this point is included. And then we extend beyond that to forecast what we anticipate that they're going to spend on the project.
So we would have paid those county employees $7 million anyway. Am I understanding that right? Because they're performing their usual tasks.
Yes, ma'am. That's what I mean by they're not part.
Right.
It's not an increase in the general budget. It's an accounting form required for capitalized projects where we have to take these costs and include them as part of the project expense.
Is that when during this process we were hearing that county employees were working 10 and 12 hours a day because they were doing their job and the capital piece of their job, and that might have led to the stabilization and the extra staff that was needed? Is that part of that picture?
Well, I think it's part of the picture. I mean, we're paying the employees regardless of whether they're working on ERP or something else. But there was certainly a lot of employees working a lot of hours and continue to do that as part of what we're doing for implementation and stabilization. Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Chairman,
Councilman Schwan.
when this project does end, and it will someday end, and will be up and operational, I think it's appropriate for this body to make sure that we do a case study of exactly how we got into this hole and how we have now gone over budget on this project. Do you think that that's a worthwhile exercise so that we don't go down this path again? Because it looks to me as this whole thing starts with a lack of leadership. You've been at this for a couple of years now. Before that, this was started out as a committee. Committees never, ever are successful unless you have a leader who's responsible. how much time has the county executive spent on this project with you for these last 2 years? How much detail would he know about what's going on in this project?
Well, I certainly can't speak for the county executive, but
I want you to speak for what you believe right now, how much time you spent with him.
I
That's a yes or no. Just give me some, how much time have you spent briefing him so he knows? Because I truly believe this started 4.5 years ago when we did not have the leadership driving this thing. As you know, it usually starts at the top, project of this nature.
Well, I think certainly at major milestones, Armin gets briefed. No question about that.
I'm not talking about a brief. I'm talking about knowledgeable about this project.
I think he has staff members that are knowledgeable about the project. I brief him on different junctures with the project. I mean, it's not. We have an executive steering committee that meets under the direction of the executive staff. And
we've seen those names come and go off that staff. People have come and gone and left. And we started with a guy we just wrote a check to for well over $100,000 just recently because he left us high and dry.
Right. I think if the question is, are we managed properly? Now, I can't speak for whatever was done in the past here, nor will I try. But do we have the right governance structure for this now? And I believe the answer is yes. Do we have the right stakeholder involvement all the way up to and including the chief of staff and the county executive? And the answer is yes. I think we put that in place some time ago, and that was briefed to this body at that time. So, to your first question, do I think, if it was directed at me, do I think it would be a good idea to do a case study, sort of an after action report, if you will, of what happened and how we can improve program management going forward? Absolutely. I think that's always a good idea on any project or program, including this one.
And I can tell you as one council person, I can't speak for my other 10 colleagues, but I do not have any desire to take the heat for what has taken place in this fiasco. I want accountability. I want names. I want references. I want background. I want all the interoffice memos, all the communication when this thing finally goes live to find out what happened, not because of anything other than so we don't make this mistake again on a major project. Mm-hmm. So keep your records. Do not dispose of any records, any documents, any files, anything at all. Just look at this and prepare it as though you were preparing to keep all those records forever.
Yeah, I have extremely detailed records on almost everything. So yes, sir.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions by my colleagues at this time?
Just one, just to bring it back to what's next. When will we know that we're moving forward on the next two critical dates in payroll?
Well, the results of each of our, each of our meetings that we have for go no go decisions, I've been including in the weekly reports. So, well, certainly you would include there, and I will make it a point to get the go no go decision schedule for the July 4th parallel and make sure that everybody's informed of that.
Thank you. And I again appreciate the weekly reports. That does keep us up to date and more knowledgeable about what's going on, even though it may not always be good news. But I do appreciate the reports coming to us on time.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Hearing none, I would like to thank Director Ryan for the presentation, and I know we're all frustrated about the challenges, but if we're going to get to WFM payroll implementation on January 1st, we do need this $600,735 appropriation, so I'm gonna make a motion that we recommend this resolution to the full council with recommendation for passage under second reading suspension. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Grudgingly.
Aye.
Any opposed say no.
No.
I heard a no from Councilman Gallagher. Any other no's? Okay, that was it. So we have the resolution passed and so recommended. So the only other item remaining on the agenda, I would first like to say thanks for my colleagues for an extensive and thorough hearing this afternoon and for taking the time and being willing to support the resolution. I heard that there was a lot of reluctance, and I know that there is, and so I recognize that. And I would just remind people that we have our next meeting this coming Thursday. That meeting is at 10 a.m., not 1 o'clock. So I will see all of you then, and I will ask whether anyone else has any miscellaneous business. Hearing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay.
Aye.
Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you very much, everybody, for your time and attention.
Thank you.
Finance and Budget